Welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with CPA and personal financial specialist Phil Putney. Now let's get rolling with today's show. Hey everybody, welcome into the podcast. Phil and I here to talk about some uncommon sense on Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts. And we got a week's worth of uncommon sense to unpack a little bit.
Yeah, we've got a lot of uncommon sense going on this week.
That's right, a lot of it going on. So what's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Doing really good. Doing good.
Yeah. You're doing better than Dogecoin people?
Yeah. Much better. Yeah. Unfortunately, if you jumped on that bandwagon, hopefully you got in really early and got out before it got crazy. So yeah.
At the time we're taping this, what'd you tell me is 5 cents?
Yeah. I just saw a post this morning. It was 5 cents. So it took a big jump up and fell hard. What comes up must come down. So
let's unpack it a little bit. So crypto has taken a whooping, as my dad would have said, this past week. Chinese, there's some stuff going on with the Chinese government. There's some various different things that kind of kicked it into place. But I mean, basically at one point, Bitcoin, as the big name, was up at 60,000. Right now, it's down to 29.
It hit a huge run this year, and then it gave it all back. So
it's giving it all back. Yeah, I think it's down 11% right now. Where, like I said, Doge was at like down 30 something, probably more than that now this morning.
Yeah,
at the time we're doing it. So what to make of it, Phil? Is that part of what we've been kind of saying with some of this stuff? It's easy to be. It's kind of like the .com millionaires and also .com knots, right?
It is absolutely so much like the .com era. In fact, I've got a manager we'll probably bring on some point that is specializing in crypto, and we've had several discussions on this. And if you mirror kind of back to what took place in the .com era, crypto is mirroring that exact same thing. And we think back of that day, or that era, there were so many of these companies popping up everywhere that they made no money. They were losing all sorts of money, but trading, for huge amounts, and boof, they're gone now. All vanished. Out of that whole craziness came a few big names that we all know now.
Yeah, Cuban.
But But back then it was like, who is that? So similar things are happening today. I mean, there's thousands of crypto, currencies or assets out there, and like Dogecoin. I mean, is it viable? Is it something that has a real use? Is it? So you've really be careful what you're investing in. Don't invest more than you can lose. I mean, there's all sorts of funny. I don't know if you've seen any of it on Facebook. There are all sorts of funny memes on that. Where there was this one. There was this one out there that had this. It said, don't invest more than you can afford to lose. And it was a husband and wife. And then the next one, the wife says, "You didn't invest more than you can afford to lose, right?" And he's kind of looking off to the side like, no.
No. Yeah, I mean, obviously Bitcoin's the big name, and that one's, and it's still obviously quite high, and people. But the funny thing is it's been around quite a bit longer than a lot of people realize. It's been newsworthy and so on and so forth for the last couple of years, but as really kind of the leader in the crypto space. It's still been out there. It's still pretty strong comparatively, but like anything, Phil, I mean, you definitely got to be careful because this stuff is still really in its infancy.
It is, very much in the infancy. I mean, there is so much similarity to the .com era, and if you look back
figuring it out,
the volatility and all these names popping up. I mean, back in that era, if you think back, and you probably don't even remember the names now, of all these companies popped up everywhere worth, all this crazy amounts of money that there was nothing there. The similar things happening in crypto. I mean, it's, you can develop your own crypto asset and, go out there and raise money, based on selling your coins. And if there's
it's gone.
If there's no actual viability to the infrastructure and purpose, and, at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of these companies or coins, whatever you want to call it, that are going to just be washed away because there's not viability. But I truly believe too, there's going to be a lot of companies that come out of this, just like the .com era, that's going to change the internet and how things work. I mean,
the landscape.
A lot of people are calling this like the internet 2.0, because this is that next stage of interacting on the digital side, more on the currency now.
True. And I think there's definitely going to be a place for investors, but again, a lot of times it's the time horizon and what you can afford to deal with and the volatility, and it's not going to be for everybody right now. And the idea of wanting to be a crypto millionaire is great, but then this week you may be a crypto ramen noodle eater.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, with any investing, I mean, if you're investing based on what's in the headlines, you missed it.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't do it because you're probably too late and it's going to hurt, So.
Yeah, you go from those highs, right? The millionaire highs to back in the college dorm days, and that's what I could think of with when you're so it's like, well, for 15 cents I can get together some ramen.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
But anyway, all right. So let's talk about. Well, I mean, that kind of really works with our theme anyway today, which is uncommon sense.
Right.
So I've got some basic statements, Phil, that people make in the industry, and we're talking about clients and investors and so on and so forth. And we know no one out there listening is going to disagree with these. All of these, everybody's going to nod their head and say, absolutely, that makes total sense. But what we wind up doing is the opposite often, so that's why we're kind of calling it uncommon sense, because these are common sense statements. So start with a classic. We'll go with a biggie. Buy low, sell high. Nobody's going to disagree with that, right?
That's right. I mean, that's how you make money in the market, right?
We all know that. So then why do we tend to not do it more times than not?
Yeah, I mean, it basically comes down to emotions, right? Fear. Okay. I mean, crypto is a great example of that. You get all hyped up and say, "Oh man, it's up to whatever it is, 50,000. It's going to the moon. I got to jump on this train before I missed out. Fear of missing out."
Yeah, FOMO, right?
And all of a sudden, bam, where's it at today? And you're like, "Oh, what did I do? Oh, no, I got to get out of this." And it's like, okay, what did you just do? Exactly the opposite of what you were supposed to do. You bought high, rode it to the bottom, panicked, and got out. So
the pandemics, March last year.
Yep, same thing. People. So that's why when you're looking at investing, you got to understand risk. You got to understand volatility. You're going to have some volatility in anything you invest in, and then make sure that risk is positioned in such a way that you're going to be comfortable with it. Because doing that buying high, selling low, that's exactly the opposite of what you want to do. And unfortunately, if you do that, you're might not be able to come back. So.
Well, and this is where I think advisors really bring a lot of their value to the table. And this is my opinion. But so if you're thinking about doing something, or you're seeing the bottom drop out on something, and you're calling up your advisor and you're saying, get me out right now, they're going to be there to give you that sounding board of pros and cons and say, okay, what's going on? Why are you thinking this? Let's take a look at some things. Let's reevaluate, or let's, take a step back to the plan and see what that's doing. And I'm not necessarily talking about the crypto thing, especially if that's speculative. I'm talking about more when we were full sale drop like last March and April, right? That kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. And again, that definitely is where an advisor can help, because it's, somebody to step in and at least give an opinion, and then, I mean, I've had that discussion with a few clients, and at the end of the day, it's your money. You tell me what you want to do, I'm going to do it. It's, sure. I can't prevent that.
But here's some reasons
have some discussion first, right? Do you really want to do this? We've got risk positioned the right way, and walk through that at least to help maybe talk you off the cliff, the edge. Maybe not. But at the end of the day, if you want to jump, then hey,
exactly.
Give me the order. Tell me to do it, and we'll do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can't prevent you from doing it, but but again, hopefully that's a discussion you've had before you get there,
right?
Because you're going to get there.
Yeah.
If you're investing, and unfortunately, I think we've kind of lost that concept. In the pandemic, I think brought it back a little bit, but. Almost and bolstered those that are, the market's always going up. It's, because it dropped, but boom, it bounced back so quick that, that wasn't reality.
Well, to that point, Phil, there's a lot of advisors out there right now working that don't know anything but an upside.
Right. Absolutely.
Been in the industry since 2010. Or 2011, right? And so it's like, it always goes up.
Yeah, I mean, if that's your advisor's experience, then exactly. I mean, they, the pandemic, when they went through that was, oh wow, I've never seen a market drop like that. And granted, again,
nobody else had either.
Many times, no one else had either. I mean, it was a historical event, both on the down and the up. But
Right.
The
But
markets do go up, go down. I mean,
yeah.
they always come back to, I call that reversion to the mean, right? Anytime you're earning more in an investment than what its average return has been,
Mhm.
you know you're going to be giving some of that return back at some point.
Okay. So again, uncommon sense is, to do the opposite. Common sense, I should say, is buy low and sell high. But we
Right.
tend to do the opposite because we let our emotions get in the way and we panic or we feel like we're going to
Yep.
miss out. So again, great value, I think, in having an advisor to help be that sounding board for us.
Yep.
Let's move on, Phil, get to some other ones here. Paying more in taxes than we have to. Duh, right? No one's probably standing outside, you're a CPA. No one's outside your office going with a sign going, Phil, I want to pay more taxes, right? I don't think that really happens, but we don't wind up being as efficient as we could be whenever you're doing things for folks in tax season and all throughout the
Absolutely.
year. That's part of your job is to say, hey, how can I make you more efficient?
Yeah, and I mean, I always joke around with clients. I said, look, you've got to pay unto Caesar what Caesar's, right? It's part of our obligation, but you don't have
Sure.
to tip them. Don't leave any more on
I
the
love that.
table than what
Right.
you have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have any patriotic duty to pay more than what your fair share is. And there's rules and regulations and ways to minimize that.
Mhm.
Absolutely take advantage of it. But again, it's one of those things you can't I always say, let the tax tail wag the dog, so to speak.
Right.
As with anything, understand the pros and cons and where it fits in, but yet don't make taxes your only decision. We absolutely try to minimize taxes when we're planning, but too often I see, and unfortunately, it's because maybe somebody's been sold on this. And
Mm.
I mean, taxes are a big deal now.
Sure. Yeah.
All advisors are talking about taxes.
Tax. Yeah.
Very, very few of them really understand it. But it's a sales topic. Oh yeah, taxes. Everyone's concerned. I mean, Biden's, the administration's looking at all these changes that are potentially coming through. Some of which might make it. A lot of which won't.
True.
So understand it, but don't make decisions just on that.
So what's your
Understand pros and cons, but have a plan.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I was going to say, so don't necessarily just get into a vehicle for the potential tax benefit if
Right.
it doesn't wind up making the most math sense. And we've seen that. Sometimes we'll see that with people having those conversations around a mortgage, right? That changed with the
Yep.
new tax structure we're under, or whatever the case is, or just getting into an investment because they think it's got tax benefits.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, if taxes are the thing that are being presented to you as a means of saving and you got to do this, life insurance is a great example, and there's nothing wrong with life insurance. They use it all the time. In the right scenario is a good fit, as with any investment type vehicle.
Right.
Although life insurance technically isn't an investment, but there's a lot of marketing out there that's done around tax-free retirement.
Right.
And using life insurance or Roth IRAs and different things, you just got to be really careful. Understand pros and cons. And if there's only one thing being presented, you got to step back and say, okay, why? Is it really a good fit? And, should I necessarily move all the way in that direction?
Okay. All right.
Understand pros and cons is really what it comes down to.
Pros and cons is, yep. It's our second favorite phrase on the show.
Yep.
Besides run the math or do the math.
Run the math. Yeah. You got to do that too when you're talking about taxes.
That's right. So I can kind of circle back around to this one a little bit. We'll keep this one short and sweet since it's kind of similar to the first one in a way. Keeping costs low. Again, you won't find anybody that disagrees with that. We all look for a nice sale, 50% off, buy one, get one free, whatever, right? So that typically catches our attention. But a lot of times as investors, we say, I want to keep my costs low, but then when you start dissecting, it's like, well, you're not.
Yeah, and again, there's pros and cons of this. You've got to understand, the reality of costs, and a lot of times, unfortunately, I think costs are brought out as a headline, by some of the companies that is their main focus is low cost.
Right.
Which I'm not saying costs aren't important, but you got to compare apples to apples, because often the funds or vehicles that are very low cost, there's not a lot, if any, of management taking place in that kind of a vehicle.
Right.
So if you're buying an index fund or an index ETF, there's not a manager that is making any kind of decision relating to that. They're simply trying to mirror an index.
You're getting zero tech support, if you will.
So exactly, it's the way of looking at it, right? So you're going to follow that index, and if that's what you want to do, great. But you can't compare that to a very tactically managed strategy or fund or whatever it is,
right.
it's apples and oranges.
Yeah.
That's like comparing vehicles based on gas mileage. Well, yeah, the Yugo is going to win every time, right? Because I mean, it gets what,
You
50
go.
miles to the gallon. But
Right.
if you're trying to tow a camper with it,
Yeah.
you're not going to get very far. You got
Yeah.
to have something. So you understand pros and cons.
Yeah.
So
Don't take a Yugo across bridges.
that's right.
Not good.
Unless there's somebody behind you pushing.
Yeah, most people probably don't even remember the Yugo, but yeah, woof, what a car. All right, so let's go to a grandma-ism here for again uncommon sense. We all know these things to be true.
Yep.
Grandma would say, don't put our eggs in one basket, and that's a,
Yep.
a cliche to the moon and back financial thing. But where I want to go with this, Phil, is that you will get someone to call and come in, and it's a prospective new client, for example, and they say, hey, I'm really excited. I'm really excited to work with you. I think I've done a good job. Here's my stuff. And I got like these 12 mutual funds that I got from 8 different companies, and I did a good job, right? I'm diversified, and
Yep.
I'm ready to roll. And you probably have to kind of bring them back down to earth and go, well, of the 12 mutual funds you got, 10 of them are all large cap. And they pretty much all have the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So you've got to really understand, what is diversification. I mean,
that's not it.
It isn't necessarily being invested in 12 different things in the same basket. Yeah, you're diversified, but in that basket, not across the whole platform.
It all goes up, but it all goes down.
Right. And I mean, if you've been in that large cap section, yeah, you've really enjoyed the last 10 years, 6, 8 years. I mean,
although
it's
small
had a great
caps done
boost.
better this year, hasn't it, Phil?
Well, now, yeah, it's starting to, the winds are starting to shift,
okay.
right?
All right.
So you've got to understand that's where diversification comes into play. Right. There's going to be times in that portfolio you look at and say, oh man, I wish I would have had more over here. Why am I invested here? This is down.
Right.
Eventually it all comes back in balance. So that's why you've got to have that blend.
So yeah, so we definitely want to be, have different things where we're up at sometimes and we're going to be down at the others, but that's the point of proper diversification versus just everything in one asset class.
Yeah. And I mean, there's other pieces or other aspects of diversification too that often doesn't get looked at. Tax is one of them,
sure.
Right? I mean, don't put all your eggs in one basket. A lot of times people save everything they have in IRAs, 401ks, those tax deferred vehicles. Same concept really applies there. That's not necessarily the right option, right? You should probably have more of a blend of where things are at from a tax standpoint. So,
all right.
Yep.
Let's do one more here, Phil, and then we'll wrap it up this week. Market timing, as we've seen this week with Doge and crypto, it's just virtually impossible, right? I mean, I don't care who you are. I don't even the people who can create massive flows with a tweet, probably still, you know what I mean? It's like, so you just can't do it. So why do it?
Yes, I mean, general market timing, I would agree. I mean, but you've got to, I guess, differentiate between market timing and tactical investing, because
trends and
there are, absolutely. The technical side of investing and following trends and, looking at where, what's in favor, what's not. 2 different types of investing. Some people follow more a passive buy and hold, here's the asset allocation type strategy. Others follow a more tactical approach. There's no right or wrong. My tendency is more towards the tactical,
right?
Which isn't market timing. I mean, market timing typically is you're like crypto, right? You're trying to buy it. Oh, things are, jumping on, you got to get on this train before it leaves. And like I said, oftentimes, if that's what you're trying to do, you missed it, because by the time it catches your attention because you've, found it in a post or heard it on the news, it is too late. That train's gone.
Yeah. And that's the 10 for the average investor, really.
Right. For the average investor, market timing absolutely is a bad idea, because if you're getting information from the normal news media or Facebook or whatever, it's going to be too late.
And that brings us really back to the emotion component, really, and just kind of bringing that full circle. And I think, again, that's where an advisor can also really bring value, not only the expertise and the years of doing it, Phil, and the training and the, all the stuff that you've gone through, but it's also just being there to go, hey, Phil, so here's what I'm seeing, or here's what I'm thinking, I don't know, am I nuts? Right. And then you could kind of have that, point counterpoint conversation to go, nah, this is not a bad idea. And let's talk through why, or maybe not. And let's talk through that as well.
Yeah. So really it comes down, and we've talked about this over and over, but having a plan, right? That's where you got to start. What is your plan? And then ultimately, if you take that thought of, okay, I'm considering X, Y, or Z, compare it back to the plan first. Does it fit in? And if so, where? Then have that discussion with your advisor. So
yeah, exactly.
If you do that, you're less likely to make this emotional kind of knee-jerk type reaction and look back at it and say, oh, I wish I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, you're less likely to have uncommon sense.
And 9 times out of 10, given time, if you look back, those decisions were not the right things.
There you go, folks. That's how we can do it. Obviously, crypto space this week was a great indicator of that. So when what we're talking about for our demographic and our show clientele, if you will, is retirement, retirees and pre-retirees, a lot of times that's the large demographic for us. That's where you got to be smart, and you got to make sure that we all know these statements to be true, yet we tend to do the opposite. And often it's because we get in our own way. We're our own worst enemy. So reach out, have a conversation with an advisor, as Phil just said, or reach out to him at 248-888-7530, 248-888-7530. It's on the screen if you're watching. Don't forget to subscribe to us. Hit the little subscribe button on YouTube or Apple or Podcast or Google Podcast or whatever it is that you're using. There's a little heart or a follow or whatever it might be, but that's all available to you. So you can find it all at philstaxhacks.com. That's philstaxhacks.com. Phil, I'm going to let you go this time, and I'll see you here soon for another podcast.
All right. Have a great week.
You as well. We'll catch you next time here on Phil's Tax Hacks and other retirement facts.
Investment advisory services offered through AFS Wealth Management. The content of this program is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. Investments and/or investment strategies involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will achieve its objectives.